What's going on, guys? It's Phil and Frank with Mastercrafted. We have a new series starting for a meta breakdown, a percentage. Our very own Frank has done an incredible amount of work to bring us some data in the Denver 40k Fight Club, Denver area community, and he's been posting this nonstop. So we wanted to get his information out to a larger audience. So hopefully this is beneficial to you, so you can see what the October meta looked like. So Frank, why don't you give us a little breakdown of you pulling this information together, what it looks like, yeah, some highlights.
Sure. I listed everything by the real win percentage from the top down. Real win percentage is just the win rate without mirrors in there. So mirrors always bring the average closer to 50%, which makes sense if you think about it. So real win percentage is with those pulled out. So I've got the factions, the total number of players, and this is between September 29th and November 2nd. TIWP, that's the tournament in winning position. So basically starting 4-0. If you start 4-0, I've got all the numbers listed there. And then how many of those became undefeateds? Not necessarily winning tournaments. I find undefeated to be a little more telling than tournament wins, because lots of things can affect the tournament win depending on how matches are made and how what tiebreakers are and things like that. So I feel like undefeated is more relevant for information, and then you just have your standard win percentage.
That is great information, and definitely the real win percentage I think is probably one of the most important because it will separate some things. So for an army like AdMech to have a 55% win rate, real win rate, and obviously AdMech, who would have thought giving an army oath would make an army better? Shocker, I know, but you give them oath, and suddenly they are just tearing up the meta right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, 7 undefeateds. They are not the highest, but for that player pool of 127, that is really good to see them go from literally the bottom position in the meta in terms of win rate to now dominating for an entire month.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's really clear from this is that the meta is in a super healthy place, at least as far as factions are concerned. Obviously, there are still a lot of internal balance issues. AdMech and Sisters are right at the top there. 55% is about as high as you want things to be. So I guess technically they're a little over, but not really. And then you have a couple armies down at the bottom that are below the Goldilocks zone or whatever. Imperial Agents, I don't really count. 13 total players over the month is not a real sample, so... but Knights they're obviously hurting right now. I think they're probably in the worst shape, despite them being third from the bottom.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before, just in terms of like a skew army that Knights is and will always be, right? Like until they combine Imperial Knights and Imperial Agents and say, hey, this is going to be a full army and we're going to give you actual infantry and stuff like that, Imperial Knights will always be a skew, right? So they are right now dealing with the fact that they got knocked down a little bit in their rules, and then everyone kits out when they know Knights are big in the meta. You will take good anti-tank consistently across the board, and Imperial Knights really don't want to see that. They prey on the fact that you might have 2 or 3 genuine pieces, and then they can handle the rest, right?
I think Imperial Knights also really struggle with powerful melee armies, just because they don't have an invul, and they're not durable in melee at all. And there are a lot of really good, fast melee armies in the meta right now that I think cause them a ton of problems.
Yeah, no, absolutely. World Eaters, Orcs, Blood Angels, Black Templars, they would love to see Knights. Yep, Shadow Mark, absolutely. Who would have thought, once again, a lone op, turn off shooting, an uppy down army is effective. I know Ben Neal and Brandon Roddy and all those guys are just excited to get that on the board again, because it's Vanguard 2.0 pretty much. So yeah, it's good to see. But then obviously there's some really interesting things here. I think Tau being towards the top is really interesting as well. We had
a ton of undefeated too. I think there's
that's really interesting.
Yeah. They're doing really well right now. Again, it's the changes from the data slate. I think Riptides to strength 10 is it's a big deal. They got a lot of good help in the data slates.
Yeah, totally agree. And they Monka is a good detachment. Cayenne is a good detachment. Tau Auxiliary Cadre is a great detachment, right? We're talking about units that are effective, that only got better, and they hunt a lot of the things in this meta because they are so lethal in shooting, and they do have quite a few tools. Necrons, who would have thought? They have a great player base. They have a lot of players. They're in a position to win. They're an incredibly durable army, and they have some great units.
Yeah.
The Immortal Warrior Brick, Wraiths, like all of those things. Silent King is still fantastic, right? They're good. They're really good.
They're sitting there right in that. They've got a pretty high player base, lots of tournaments in winning position, and plenty of undefeateds as well. But they're sitting right there at just over 50%, which is really ideal. That's where you want everyone to be. So I think they're not crazy. No one is really too crazy out of control. I think AdMech is close, but I played him a few times in the last teams tournament, and obviously teams are a little skewed. But man, they're just so fast and they're so deadly in Halo Screed, and then they're really hard to kill in Skitarii cohort. It's a very good army right now. But
Yeah.
it doesn't feel to me like it's totally over the top. Nothing really feels that way right now, which I think is really great.
Yeah, no, totally agree, which is nice because you and I both remember, even as recently as Mordaka. Like Mordaka came out, that was oppressive. That was really bad. And I keep using that as an example because it's very fresh. But there were times like maybe there was a Slanesh detachment that was pretty strong and oppressive that Frank
Yep,
really enjoyed.
yep,
And that
yep,
was a problem for a lot of people. And that was very, very strong. But even the new codexes, so Votan's new codex,
yep.
we're seeing that balance out. Black Templars new codex, we're seeing that balance out, which is crazy because I think like Gladius Black Templars is probably some of the best I've seen. But look at that win rate; it's right in that acceptable zone.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got the reactive move from Gladius, and then you have your blood surges from the Crusader bricks. I played into that as well, and it's something for sure. But there are plenty of counters to it in the meta, which is cool.
Well, for all of those watching, hopefully this information was valuable to you. There's a lot of stuff on here that we can go over. If you want to see more of this, it is something Frank is posting in the Mastercrafted Discord on his own accord. So please make sure you let him know how much you appreciate it. And if you have any questions, concerns, or even points of feedback, I know he and I are always down and we want to share this information as much as possible. So thank you so much for taking the time. Frank, do you have anything else? Any last minute notes before we sign everyone off?
Yeah, I think there's just a couple of numbers that are a little bit misleading on here. Drukhari, they haven't had their codex for this whole month, so we'll have to see next month what that actually looks like. I know they're a very hard army to drive, just because they're so fragile and they're really vulnerable to indirect and things like that. But I imagine it'll come up a little bit. And then Emperor's Children, which is my favorite army to play right now. I actually do pretty well with them, but they definitely need some help. They've got 5 undefeateds there. It's not bad, but I think in good players' hands they're good, and then it's a hard army to just pick up and play. But again, I think we'll see what happens with this sort of new meta. Like I don't mind playing AdMech and Sisters with my Emperor's Children. I think I have good matchups into them. So if you see their numbers exploding, Emperor's Children should come up. So can you hear my son? I don't think that they're very far off. The stuff.
I, do, I would totally agree. I would totally agree, and obviously your son agrees as well. Emperor's Children singing their songs. They would love to go into AdMech and Sisters, just because you're right. You hunt infantry so well. You are so incredibly fast, right? You can even go into their tough, quote unquote, tough bodies aren't really that tough for EC. You have access to dev wounds. You have access to mortal wounds. Like you pick up those things, and that's the nice part about this. The kind of meta we're in right now, it does feel like rock, paper, scissors, but it's not hard rock, hard paper, hard scissors. There are answers across the board.
Yep, very healthy, which is cool. Probably the most, I've been playing since the 90s, and this is the most balanced I've ever seen the game, and it's not even close. So
Yeah. Hey, we love to hear it, and hopefully, all y'all that are getting ready to play their first games of 40k or their 200th game of 40k, make sure you appreciate what we have, because who knows what 11th edition is going to bring. We, we just have what we do now, and it's great. So don't forget, victory isn't given; it's forged, and it's forged right here on Mastercrafted. Thanks for tuning in, guys.